Welcome. This is a tutorial in flying the Beechjet, the Raytheon Beechjet. I've already started the engine because I'm not allowed a very long video on this camera. We start the engine by moving this lever here to the left, pressing the left hand button, moving that lever there to the right and pressing the right hand button, then returning the lever to the center. Before you do that, you have to switch on your master power, which is here, your ignition and the boost pumps, and your engine's on. Also, good idea to test the inverters before you get going. The buttons for the inverters, you unlock them here and you deploy them here. I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing at. The inverters help to slow down the airplane more by adding reverse thrust to the engine, and they will only deploy if the engine revs are below about 2000. So you have to take, when you're landing, you've got to get your engine revs to 0. Some traffic coming in there or going out. We're taking off on runway 17. So what I like to do is I like to set the CDI to 170 degrees, which is this green bar here. You can rotate it. We set it to 170 degrees, and then that shows me, in relation to my plane, which is the yellow thing here, the orientation of the runway. It just helps me to find the runway more easily. It also helps if you're coming into the runway to know whether you are going to be downwind, to know what that means, left downwind or right downwind, left base or whatever he's asked you, the tower. You know, you can do it. We've just gone past the beacon, I think. So here's someone coming in to land. Little Cessna or something there.
Beechjet, 9 Lima Golf. Contact tower for takeoff clearance on 124.4.
So confirm that. Before the plane even starts to move, really we should have the rotating beacon on here. Also, once we are ready to take off, I'm just going to change the frequency. We're going to be remaining in the pattern. We want to switch on the anti-collision lights, which are the strobes that you see here and here, and the nav lights, the red and the green, that show you which direction the plane is coming in at night. You don't use those in the daytime, only at night. So we must check for traffic. He did say taxi into position and hold, so that means go onto the runway and wait. Okay.
Winds calm, clear for takeoff, runway 17. Take left traffic, report downwind. Be advised, traffic pattern altitude is 1,200.
Roger. So we're going to set the altimeter to 1,200. Make left traffic.
Do you copy?
Oops. So I'm just going to show you the inverters now. We take the revs down, we deploy the inverters, and then when we fire up the engines, it'll slow the plane down. Don't do it when the plane is static, but we're just testing them here. We're just going to quickly run through and check the instruments. Go up to maximum revs. We've got all the necessary lights on. Don't need the boost pump, it's handy, but you don't need it. Right, we're at maximum, manifold pressure at maximum, oil pressure correct, oil temperature correct, fuel flow correct. Fuel, got half a tank on each side. Now we can just release the brakes and the plane will start to take off on its own. Remember, it's make left traffic. We can deal with that now with the header there, this little bug here we can drag. The plane is now going to take off on its own. You don't need to rotate. In fact, you need to trim the nose down quite a bit on this plane and bring the gear up, this lever here. Up comes the gear. trimming the nose down. 1200 feet I think he said, so we switch the autopilot on, altitude at 1200 feet, and just drag it down to 1200 now. Our speed's going to go up considerably once we stop climbing. We can switch off the ignition now. So what we need to do is, you can either manually adjust the speed with the engines, or you can just set another speed bug there on the autopilot. And in fact, because we're remaining in the pattern, we should really have left the gear down, but I'm just showing you that you should bring the gear up, because if you were actually trying to take off, that would be pretty bad. So we're just going down to 1200 feet now. We're going to make left traffic by clicking heading. I'm going to switch off speed so that the plane will slow down because of the maneuver, and we can bring the gear out again. Give it a bit more revs. So it's making left traffic on its own, and you should be able to see the runway. There it is. And we're going to complete the turn. We're going to just drag the heading bug all the way around. So you don't need to use a stick even to fly this plane. I don't even use the stick to land it. Making left traffic means the runway is on our left as we go past it, and then we'll turn around and come back to land. That's called left traffic, or left downwind rather. Make left traffic is turning left. But we are left downwind, which means the runway's on our left, but we're going to come back the other way. That means we've stalled. We need a bit more revs. The revs were far too low, and the plane was maintaining its altitude, and so obviously it stalled. Come on. Shouldn't need to give it that much revs. Oh, we lost some height. And of course the autopilot's trying to gain height as well as speed there. So should have realised we'd lost quite a bit of height there. Hence why the stall just carried on and carried on. So get the revs back down now to about, into about 70ish. Surprising how much revs you need when you're downwind. Okay, so here's the runway on our left. We're looking out the left hand window now of the cabin. When we come into land, a couple of things. You'll see some red and white lights. If you can see both red and white, you're on a good angle coming into the runway. If you can only see red lights, you're coming in too soon and you're going to crash before you hit the runway. If it's both white, then you're going to be too high. You're going to fly over the runway. You won't have enough runway left to land on. You just remember this as red on red, you're dead, smack. White on white, you're high as a kite. That's how you remember it. Or you can say red on white, you're all right. It's a simple angled light that when you're above an angle you'll see both, and below it you'll see the reds, and above it you'll see the white. So we're going to tell him now that we're downwind. We're going to land.
Beechjet 9 Lima Golf, downwind, full stop. Beechjet 9 Lima Golf, number 1, clear to land, runway 17. Beechjet 9 Lima Golf, clear to land.
And because it's daytime, we're going to put the landing lights on. You can actually make them pulse on this aircraft. They're here. You can switch on the ignition and the boost pump. It takes away a few revs. You need then to increase the revs a little bit sometimes. Same goes for anti-ice and aircon. Increase the revs to compensate for those being on if you're trying to maintain speed. So now we're going to turn left, and as I said, I don't use the stick very much. I like to use the bug because I can just drag it around here to 90 degrees to 170, because that's what we did. We did a loop using that to get here. We should be in line with the runway when we get back. So we did it in sort of two halves, didn't we? I'm also just going to point out that you can also, if you've got passengers on board, you can press this little half button here, which means that the plane only tilts at 15 degrees instead of 30 degrees, which would be your maximum bank. 30 degrees is about as much as you want to do in an aircraft like this. So I'm just going to go to a better view now, and I'm going to switch off the autopilot for a second and go to manual just to see where the runway is. We've come over it because we did that half, because we did 15-degree banking there. We're a little high and we're a little far over to the right. I'm going to take one notch of flaps. You see it's white on white, so we're high as a kite. So in order to adjust our height, we reduce the revs. That's how you adjust height in an aircraft, you reduce the revs. And I'm using the trim now to try and keep that runway in the middle of the windscreen. That's what you do. You don't think about, am I on target? You used to use the speed of the engine to keep the runway in the middle of the windscreen, and that is all there is to it basically. When we get near enough, we can start to just cut the revs even further. And we're going to let the back wheels touch first, and then we nose forward, let the front wheel touch, reduce the revs to 0, switch on the inverters, open the inverters I should say. There they are, slowing us down. We can take the revs right back down again now before we end up. It's a bit slow to respond on this simulator. And then close the inverters once more, and now we're whizzing along nicely. We've done that with quite a bit of runway to spare. Quite a good landing there. And the usual way is to turn left. When you've landed a plane, you generally come left off the runway. And make sure you switch off all those horrendous lights that are going to blind people now. Very important that switch off your anti-collision lights while you're taxiing, and your landing lights. And that is the Raytheon Beechjet. Don't expect to be able to fly it the first time based on that, but I've told you pretty much everything you need to know here. We've just reset our flaps back to where they were, and there you go.